Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards, and hey, my skin doesn't look as red. I finally went out and bought a flipping ring light, so I'm looking much better. I don't look sunburned like I have the last few shows. Hey, we got a really good show for you guys today. We're going to be talking about mental health and that there is hope. And you guys have heard us talk about mental health on the show quite a bit, as well as trauma. And you guys know it falls underneath the addiction umbrella. And I just want to say right now, so I don't forget, a huge thank you to our friends, John Apsey, because he's the one that connected me with our guest today. We've got Preston and Coda Ewing. Guys, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. You know, John reached out and he said, hey, I know these two guys, great people. And the son had come up with this app that helps with like suicide and things. And you know, Preston, you and I got on the phone and we were chatting a little bit. And I mean, immediately I knew I wanted to have you guys on the show because Coda, what you are doing, I think is awesome. I think it's going to end up being a great resource. Anything we can do here on the Other Side of Addiction podcast, please let us know. I mean, I've got connections to Good Things Utah and things like that. If you want to get on there, I'll connect you with Savvy, you know, so you can go in there. Whatever I can do within my power to help you guys spread the word, we're here. So during our conversation, guys, oh, yeah, and today again, guys, we're going to be talking about mental health. There's a reason why you came up with this app, right, Coda?
Yeah.
And it was because of a family member that was having some issues?
It was because of myself. Yeah.
Okay. All right. It was you. Okay.
Yeah. So the idea for the app started really simple, actually. I was in a college English class and I was writing a paper about suicide prevention. And I was like, I needed something to go along with my paper, some sort of physical item. And I'm a software developer. So I was like, oh, I'm talking about this thing called the crisis response plan. There's no digital version of it out there. I'm just going to create a simple app where people can type in their plan and that'll be it. And then I slowly started having more ideas and more things. And I started to realize, oh, this is something that could really help. And I started thinking about this experience I had. It was probably, I think it was 2018 Christmas night. And I was basically at the end of my life is what I thought it was. I was searching through cabinets, trying to find anything to, let me go to sleep and not wake up. And so as I was doing this, I was like, okay, I'm going to call my therapist, just let him know what's going on. And so me and him had a discussion. And at the end of the call, he said, okay, I need you to call your dad, get him over there. And because, it's Christmas. And so I hung up the phone and I just threw it under the couch. I was like, I don't want to deal with this right now. I'm too far gone. And then him knowing better called my dad on my behalf, told him what was going on. And he came over that night. And that's the reason I'm still here today. And I started thinking about how I didn't have the strength to reach out to anybody when I was in one of the darkest points of my life. And a lot of people are the same way. So I thought, what if there was an app that could be that intermediary between you and your loved ones who need to know how you're feeling? So I came up with this app. It's called Mentality, and it's based off of the crisis response plan, which is a 5-step kind of mental exercise that you can go through. So you start out with your warning signs. Make sure you're on the lookout for things that lead to you getting too depressed. And then if you start to recognize some of those, the second step is self-management strategies. So if you like working out, if you like listening to music, going for a drive, whatever, just something to kind of get your mind back into a healthy spot. And then the third part is reasons to live. And those are just everything positive in your life. I don't care if it's a trip coming up, a person you love, an animal, whatever it is, something in your life that's positive that you are looking forward to. And then the fourth step is your social support. So the people around you who you can reach out to when you're in a time of need, who will always be there for you. And then the last one is what they call professional help. So if you have a therapist, you would put their number there, or the suicide hotline or other different hotlines that help. So the app will alert users every day to say, hey, check in, how are you doing today? Depending on what they rate, it will direct them to a part of the plan that they've put in that will help them the most that day. And then if the app recognizes that a user is starting to get too depressed or their score is starting to go down too low, it will automatically send a text message out to their contacts who they've specified and saying, hey, you need to reach out to this person. They're not doing well today. Tell them you love them, check in on them, whatever. Because it is really hard to send that text saying, hey, I need some help. I need to talk about something. And so just if you get in the habit of every day checking into the app, saying, okay, do you know what? Today's a good day. As you start to, get more and more depressed, it'll automatically recognize that and say, hey, I'm going to text people for you. You don't have to worry about one more thing right now.
That is such a great context. And while you're talking about this, Coda, I'm picturing an app like this for people in recovery. Mm-hmm. I mean, seriously, because the last 6 months, I've seen my wife just kind of start going backwards, right?
Yep.
I started seeing old patterns coming back.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just because I'm with her all the time, right? Can imagine if I wasn't with her as much as I was, I'd be missing out on all that stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I think too, just kind of give a back history to that story that Coda shared. He was working with his therapist, and he actually signed a suicide contract with his therapist. And in that contract, it basically stated, if you ever get to the point that you feel you're actually going to do bodily harm, you have to reach out to 3 people. That was on his contract. And I remember talking to his therapist, and I was like, does that really work? Like, I don't know if that works. He goes, the interesting thing is people that are struggling and they've actually signed this contract, they're more concerned about breaking that contract than causing physical harm. And so his therapist was one of the contacts he had listed in the contract that he signed. And I was another person on that list, and I don't remember who your third person was.
Probably mom or something like that.
So it did work. He did reach out, and I'm grateful as a father. And there's nothing more difficult than to see your kids struggle and to find them in that state, because as a parent, we see the good in him, right? And we see his potential. And, so to see him doubt himself or be in a state where he didn't feel like his life mattered, it's heart-wrenching as a parent. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that he had the courage to reach out. I'm grateful that he had the courage to honor the contract that he signed, because it allowed us to still be with him. And a lot of people go through it. And sometimes we're oblivious sometimes, right? Our days are busy and our schedules are busy. And unless we're really sitting down and having meaningful conversations with those, people in our lives that are important to us, you do wake up one day and go, oh, what happened? Yeah. I didn't realize they were struggling so bad. Why could I have done different? And as a parent, I think, one of the things Aubrey and I have always told our kids from the time they were very little was like, look, if you have anything, you can always come to us, right? Even if you made a mistake, we don't care. We all make mistakes. And we'll never punish you for coming to us about a mistake, as long as you're honest with us.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you're honest, as parents, we're still going to talk to you, but we'll never punish you or make you feel bad for the mistake you made. And I'm grateful for that, because I do believe, no parent's perfect. It's a learning process. Each kid's different, right? What works for one kid doesn't work for the other kid.
Yeah.
And so it's this learning process. But I do feel strongly that our kids have always been able to come to us with the things that they struggle with or with the things in their life. And I'm grateful that we have that level of trust within the family, because It's important. Trust is important. Your kids have to feel safe to be able to approach you. And most importantly, they have to feel loved. And that love's unconditional. And that no matter what they're going through, you're going to be there for them and you're going to love them and you're going to help them through it.
Yeah, that is such a great point, Preston, because I was scared to death of my dad. I mean, literally. And I learned how to be a really good liar and manipulator because of it. Yeah. Right now. And I'm not saying I'm blaming it on him. I made my choices. These were my choices, right? He didn't force me to make those choices. I made them myself. And like you said, we do the best we can as parents. There's no handbook. We do the best that we can. However, I was scared. I was scared to death. And when I started having kids, that's something I told my two daughters as well. I don't care what it is. I will never yell or scream or get upset with you. Just come to me and talk to me about it, because I don't want you to be afraid like I was afraid.
Yeah, I was raised in the South. And so my dad was old school, hard knocks.
Yep.
I would take my chance riding home with a drunk guy than to ride home with him. It just felt safer. And I had a better chance of surviving. You know what I mean? And my dad softened over the years. He just passed, about a month ago, and I love him to death. And I'm grateful for what he taught me, right? Because he taught me hard work and a lot of other important things with my faith and other things. But I get it. I was afraid to, that was the last call I wanted to make was to my dad, and I will say this, and I'm not trying to jump the show, just to show the change of my own dad and how it affected my life. Because I remember one time when we were kids, we were coming home from church. My brother was at a girlfriend's house, and we picked him up, and he was whacked out on Quaaludes, which shows how old I am, because most people don't even know what that drug is anymore. And I remember my dad was so angry, and he dropped us kids off, and then him and my brother left. And I was like, oh gosh. The next morning I wake up and tell my mom, I'm like, I think Dad killed Philip last night. And she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, I think he did. Like, we're all here, but Philip's gone. And she's like, no, he didn't. But my dad ended up taking him to jail for the night. And then the next morning, picking him up from jail and then taking him to a recovery center. And it worked for a little bit with my brother. But obviously, if you're not willing, you're not in that place to want to make that change, it's kind of hard, right? You can temporarily do it, but until it becomes a self-belief, this is really what I want to do, it's hard to make that change. And to fast forward, I was a rebellious kid. And I remember one day I was 18, and I go in my drawer to get some items, that I was going to take for the Friday night party. And they were gone. And I was searching through my drawers. And all of a sudden I heard my dad go, hey, Preston, we need to go for a ride. And I'm like, I'm going to jail. And I remember getting in the car with my dad, and he drove me around, and he just told me how much he loved me and how much I was selling myself short and how I had so much potential that I didn't even realize yet. And that when I was willing to change, him and my mother would be there for me to help me change. And I remember getting out of the car, and that was the point where I wanted to start the change. It took me a little bit, but that was the seed planted, because there's two things I realized. I knew he loved me, and I knew he was right. And had he been my dad of old and called me stupid and you're an idiot and why would you do this, I easily could have got out of that car and tried to justify all my behavior. Yeah. And say, he don't get me. He don't understand me. He's old school. I'm going to live my life. But he learned. He learned from his first experience with my brother. And in that short time, he learned that love works way more effective than force or any other method. And love is undeniable. When you know someone loves you, that's something you can't deny. And that works inside you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it, right? It is the love. Coda, what was it like for you? I mean, dealing with what you was dealing with. I mean, did you have the feeling like your parents didn't understand you, or also too, probably that fear was there, right? Because that fear, man, it takes over all of us, right? It doesn't pick and choose. It's all of us. that we
Mm-hmm.
live by that fear, the fear of being judged, the fear of what we might look like or what other people are saying, So what was it like for you?
So for me, it was interesting because I always knew my feelings were valid growing up. Like I was never afraid that people weren't going to justify how I was feeling. Um, but for me, I kind of had a experience where my older brother deals with the same stuff, and he was very open with my parents about it and very vocal. Um, they always knew when he was struggling, and for me, I would always use that as, oh, I have it easier. Like if I was struggling with something, hearing somebody else talk about it, I'm like, oh, my life's not that bad. I don't need to worry about it. So it was no fault of anybody else except my own. Is I was just putting myself down, saying, do you know what, my feelings aren't valid. I can last a little bit longer. And when you live your life like that, it gets to the point where it's life and death. You stuff everything down, and then it's got to come out at some point. So that's one of the things with the app that I'm really hoping for, is just getting people to recognize that their mental health is important, that no matter who else they are worried about, no matter how many people they know who are struggling, that their struggles are just as important as theirs. And by, doing something every day that's focused just on yourself, just saying, okay, today I'm going to rate how I'm doing. I'm going to leave a little journal entry about what I'm feeling. It helps you get that validation of, okay, these are real feelings. These are something that need to be taken seriously. And my dad said something a little bit ago about you have to have the mentality to change, which is why I've called my app Mentality. The first reason is it does take a mentality to want to live. If suicidal ideation is something you struggle with, it's really hard wanting to, not just taking the easy road out, wanting to take that struggle road to become happy. And then the second reason is for the people who don't have that mentality yet, I want them to gain that mentality. I want them to be able to say, do you know what? Right now, I can't imagine, living past next week, but I want to be able to see farther into the future. Because with my own experience, I always picture it almost like a candlelight. Like when I'm doing great, that candlelight's really bright and big, and I can see 5-10 years into the future. I'm like, oh, I want all these things. And then as I start to, my mental health starts to decrease, I notice that flame gets a little bit smaller until it's like, I don't even know what's going to happen past next week. Like, not that anything bad's going to happen. I just can't see that far into the future right now. So what's really cool, because this uses the crisis response plan back to that contract for safety, or the suicide contract. I've done a lot of research on this, and the contract for safety is a very effective method, but the crisis response plan was developed to be even more effective than that. And it showed that not only does it decrease suicide rates by 76%, it decreases suicidal ideation by the same amount. So it doesn't just save you, it keeps you away from suicide. Which is why it's something that I wanted to base my app around, because I'd done all this research, read all these papers, all these studies, and I was like, this is just a way to structure your life to be more positive and to be more uplifting. And so you can adapt it to whatever. It doesn't have to just be suicide. If you're struggling with addiction, all the same steps apply. It might be a little bit different outcome. You might not say, oh, today I'm feeling my mood is a 8 out of 10. It might be my temptations aren't that bad today. I don't feel like I need to abuse a substance today. But it gets you to recognize when you start, going down that path back towards relapsing, or back towards anything. You can use it for stress. You can use it for anger. If you have a emotion that you're trying to overcome and you're trying to get a hold of, this is just a way to structure your mind so that you have the tool and the strength to overcome it.
I love the whole idea. I mean, I'm picturing this app in my head, and picturing all these categories that you just mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be used for everyone.
Yeah.
Seriously, everyone. Because I shared also before the show in a little bit, I've got some personal things going on right now and in the past, luckily I've gained some tools that I've learned throughout the years. In the past, man, it would really put me down, and I still feel an emptiness inside me. However, it's not all gone, right? I still have my energy. I still have some sense about me. To be able to have something like that at my fingertips right here, to be able to go, okay, this is what's going on with me today. What a huge tool, right? Because our subconscious has a mind of tricking us. And I think that's one of our greatest enemies is our subconscious mind, because we start thinking of things and then we actually start believing them. And of course, I'm sure with all the studies that you've done, we literally start seeing it, right? It actually is happening right in front of us because we're visualizing it so much. However, we can also use that to our strengths if we learn how to recognize the bad path and get ourselves back on the good path. And I've shared on the show quite a bit of times too. God's given us all these emotions for a reason. It seems like society has really put a shun on that, right? Men are not supposed to cry. We're supposed to be tough. We're supposed to be macho. We're supposed to smash beer cans on our forehead all the time. And we're not supposed to feel any kind of love or emotions. We're not supposed to show people our weaknesses. We're not supposed to be sad. We're not supposed to depress. We're not supposed to get angry. Hell, why did God give us all these emotions if we're not supposed to feel them? However, there are individuals, right? Many of us, we feel those, but it just compounds and we end up getting stuck there to where it's like standing in a pool of stagnant water and mud. Right.
Yeah.
And if
I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Preston. Go ahead.
I think a lot of issues, me personally, you can track it back and stem it back to some sort of trauma you've experienced in early childhood, right? A lot of our self-identification is formed at a very early age in life. And if you experience some sort of trauma during that period, it can have a very negative impact on how you view yourself, your self-image, your self-worth. And so a lot of times when we start thinking, why do I struggle with this? A lot of times we can trace it back to something that happened early on in our life that we maybe didn't have the tools or the ability to recognize and to get help to understand it and how it affects you. Because I talk to a lot of people and I deal with a lot of people that have come to me with different issues, and I talk about emotions. Our emotions are there because that's what makes us human. And I said, and it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be down. Those are natural feelings that occur based on life events and things going on. And I tell people, sometimes you got to sit in the suck. That's just part of life. Right. And you got to sit in the suck, but you don't have to stay there. And one of the things I allow myself to do, because I've gone through some things and some losses that really affected me, and I give myself a timeline. I say, you know what, for the next 2 hours, I'm going to feel these emotions and I'm going to try to understand them the best I can. So if I want to be sad for 2 hours, I want to be sad for 2 hours. But at the end of that 2 hours, I'm going to get up and I'm going to change my environment and I'm going to change my thought. And I'm going to focus on the things I need to work on or the things that bring me happiness, right? But it's okay to sit there for a couple hours and be sad and go, why am I sad? Am I sad because my dad just passed away? Am I sad because my kids are struggling? Am I sad because I just lost my job? What's making me sad? And feel it and kind of go through it in your own head and start to process it, but realize that being there is not going to help you long term, right? You feel it in the moment and you express it, but then you got to put an action to it, a positive direction to move forward. And sometimes you do have to set a timer. So I'm going to set my alarm for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit in this and I'm going to wallow and I'm going to be whatever I'm feeling for 2 hours. And when that alarm goes off,
I'm going to
I'm
eat a
gonna,
bag of Oreos.
yeah, I'm going to change. I'm going to get up. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do something to change my environment so then I can change my mood and my where I'm at.
Yeah. And it sounds like, Coda, from what you talked about, how your app is designed, it sounds like that's what that is also, that's part of it, right? To help you kind of go through your emotions and go through that step to where you're allowing yourself to feel what you feel. However,
Mhm.
also you've got those tools, right, to help you get out of it. I mean, you know, I've done foundation leaks before with my brother, and you know, some of these homes you got to dig down 8 feet, you know, to get to the bottom of the foundation, and you start
Mhm.
getting to where you can't throw the dirt up over your head anymore. You got to put it in a bucket, and someone pulls it up, and to get out of the hole, you got to get on a ladder and climb yourself out.
Mhm.
And it sounds like, so we have those tools, right? We have that stuff to help us get the job done. And it sounds like that's exactly what this app is for. And it's just not to notify someone else to say, hey, this individual struggling, like you said, you just might want to give them a call and say, hey, how you doing today? You know, how's life treating you?
Mhm.
But also for that individual, because it is okay for us to feel the emotions, right? That's our human nature. I was sharing with a friend the other day who was a coach, Nick Smith, and I was telling him how upset I was, you know, when I found out what was going on with my wife and the anger that I felt. And I'm like, I really thought I had a grasp on it. And he's like, Al, that's your body just protecting itself. Don't beat yourself up for feeling this way, right? That's its feeling to go, okay, I got to protect myself. I'm going to get angry, right? Because that's one of our
Yeah.
normal responses. That I think that's why there's so much damn road rage out there. Plus the traffic's
Yeah.
terrible, you know. So
Yeah.
again, I really love the all the thought that you were putting into this app, because I'm sure you've already done it, but my head's going off in all types of directions where this app can help people.
Yeah, that's one of the things that is hard because I have so many good ideas. The people I talk to about it, they have so many good ideas, and I want to incorporate them all. And I love when people express their opinions, their ideas to me about how it could be better. So the hard part is saying, okay, this is something that we're just developing. This is something that we're trying to get out there to everybody. What is important for just now? Like, what is like the MVP, the minimal viable product? So I have a long list of like features that the app will have one day, and then I have my subset of, okay, this is what we need just to get people some help initially, and then we can always expand on it. And one of those is um, it'll basically be like a graph that will track your mood over time, but you can go back and choose a day and read your journal entry from that day and say, okay, let's say I'm at a low point today. Last week I rated myself an 8. What was going on that day? Why was I so excited that day? To use your own experiences to pull yourself out, because I've always, when I'm down, the best thing I can do is hear how other people have overcome it. And it's really powerful. It's really strong to hear it from others. But if you can hear it from yourself as well, that's even more powerful, because you have that strength. You had it last month, you had it last week, you had it yesterday. Um, and it's interesting if you look at people who have committed suicide. A lot of people think that it happens at rock bottom. If you look at their mood on a scale, it's when that line stops at the bottom, but it's actually just a little bit up as they start to recover, because as they start to want to feel better, they realize, wow, this is a lot. I have a lot that I need to work on. And that's when they feel like they can't keep going because they're trying to get better and it's just not working. So to mitigate that, we want to keep people away from, that point, which is again what the app is designed for. But even when they're at that point, if you can just look back and say, do you know what, this is something that I've overcome in the past, having a chart to say, you can look at the highest point in the, as long as your app has been recording, why was I so happy that day? What was so amazing in my life? Because it's still going to be there. like those memories, those experiences, if it's somebody in your life who made a difference, that's not going to change. So it's just important getting people to reflect on themselves, reflect on their past accomplishments, and using that to kind of propel them in the future when they're down.
It's like celebrating the good days instead of the bad days.
Exactly.
We had a guest on our show, gosh, probably a year and a half ago. He's from Salt Lake, businessman, very successful business here in Salt Lake City. And he battled porn addiction for 2 decades or 3 decades. Anyway, he was on a business trip and he was just started beating himself up, going, man, why can I not beat this? Why am I struggling so much with this? And he knew of a bridge, and he drove the rent-a-car to this bridge, and he was going to jump off this bridge, commit suicide in another state, right? And he decided to say a prayer before he did. And this little voice popped in his head saying something about, why are you not celebrating the good days? And he stopped and he started thinking. And he's like, gosh, you know what? I've gone 48 hours before. Oh my gosh, yeah, I've gone a week before. So at that time, he realized instead of counting the bad days, he started counting the good days. And as he did that, the good days started growing, right? There started to be more and more good days because he stopped judging himself. He stopped beating himself up for falling backwards. And I think we all run into those issues. And some of us just fall into them a little harder, right? Because of whatever else is going on in our life. And I think, again, that's where people don't understand, right? We think, and I could be wrong here, and we talked about this on a show not too long ago. I think it's the medical part of things. It's what labeled the mental health of you're not right to be here, right? You need to be somewhere else because you don't belong in society. If they grabbed everyone, let's just say 1,000 people, and put them in a line and went in and did tests on them, I would probably think, and I'm guessing here, right? I don't know studies. I haven't said, I would probably say 99.8% would have some kind of mental issue.
Yeah, definitely. They actually did a study. So before the pandemic, and this is talking about strictly clinical levels of depression. Before the pandemic, is about 23, 25% of the US population had clinical levels of depression. During the pandemic, that number went up to 50%. Jeez. And that's not just, somebody saying, oh, I'm a little sad today. That's a clinical level of they needed treatment to overcome it. It was 50% of America. And it's kind of crazy to think about that number. It's like, if you have a room full of 10 people, 5 of them right there are struggling with something like almost unimaginable. And so it's more important than ever to, start having these conversations about, how you're feeling, make sure you're getting the treatment you needed. And like, for me, the biggest issue I had with, going to therapy or, asking to go to therapy for my parents was the price. It's like, I can't justify paying $120, $200 an hour to talk about my feelings. Like, that's not going to help anybody. And so that's why it's really important for my app for the end user, the people who actually need it. They're not going to pay a dime. Later on, if we want to add in some counseling and stuff through the app, we'll have paid features, but all of the core features that will help everybody, those are going to be free. And it's designed so that people can say, okay, do you know what? This is helping, but I do need that extra help. I do need to go see somebody about this. Or maybe they recognize, do you know what? This is doing a lot. I don't need that help. Like, I just have this app. It's helping me every day. But it's just for people to say, do you know what? Okay, I'm going to seek something out. I'm going to try and be even better than I think I can be.
And I think too, just hitting on his app and one of the things he has with that analytical tracking, if you are working with a professional therapist, or if you're in a school and you're working with a counselor inside the school, it gives them a roadmap to be able to look at before you come into them to already see where you're at. Because a lot of one of the difficult things with therapy, from my personal experience, is when you go to your therapist and say you're on a 2-week schedule, you go every 2 weeks. Well, by the 2 weeks get there and you sit down, he's like, all right, tell me what's going on the last 2 weeks. And you're like, where do I start? And then sometimes you get on a tangent, or sometimes you get and go down a rabbit hole with one thing. Whereas with this, both of you know beforehand kind of where you've been the last 2 weeks, because you can see where your moods have been. And then you can pull up a journal entry. The therapist could look at, I see you were kind of down on Thursday. What happened? And you can click on that and go through your journal and say, oh, well, this is what was going on. So that helps you to recall those things. So then he has something to work with you, or her has something to work with you on. Yeah. That's tangible and real, right? Not a made up or I'm trying to remember. I'm old, so like memory's crucial for me, right?
Yeah, right.
So trying to recall specifically what happened on that day may not happen. But if I had a journal entry, I could go read it and say, oh yeah, this is what happened.
Yeah. And with that, let's say it's something external that happened. Somebody said something that didn't sit with you right or whatever. It's really easy 3 days later to be like, oh, it like really didn't affect me that much. I'm fine. But if you have a journal entry that says, oh no, that actually like made me start doubting myself, made me start doing this, then you can go back and actually uncover what your mind is trying to cover up as you process things, so that you can kind of go back to that exact moment and say, okay, this is actually how I was feeling. Let's address some of those worries, some of those doubts I was having at that moment, instead of how I'm feeling now about it.
I love that. I mean, this is such a huge tool. And again, it can be used for so many different things. I lost a good friend. Oh my gosh. Preston, you're talking about our memories. I lose track of time so quick. Something that happened 6 weeks ago actually happened a week ago, I thought, but
yeah.
I lost a good friend probably about 6 years ago, and he battled depression. He was just an amazing, amazing individual. I miss him. I miss him all the time. Really good friend. I grew up with him, junior high, high school. He and I there was 7 of us that hung out. He and I just kind of had this click, right? We just kind of had this bond that we didn't have with the other guys that we hung out with. And I know he just said enough one day and just took a bunch of sleeping pills and didn't wake up, and it broke my heart. When I got the call from his wife, it just tore me to pieces. And being on the other side of things, it's like, gosh, could I have done something more? Could I have called him more? And of course us, and Preston, you could probably even touch on this. And thank goodness you didn't have to, but you do, right? You start questioning yourself as a parent or as a friend, going, what could I have done differently? What, could I have done this, or could I have said that, or did I do this wrong, or did I do that wrong? And really, in all reality, the battles with the individual, right? And all we can do, and I think you even said it at the beginning, it's the love, right? Just to let them know that we love them, because that's huge. That is so huge. We talked about that in our podcast this morning, our earlier podcast, about how much love can change someone. Just this Dr. Rob Kelly that I interviewed out of Texas this morning, he's been on the show twice now. And he's like, if you're walking down the street and you see someone that has a really cool pair of tennis shoes, just say, hey man, nice shoes. And he says, as you pass them, turn around and watch them. He says, they'll look down at those shoes twice.
Yeah.
And he says, that's them validating. And they're like, all of a sudden you'll see them stick out their chest. Their walk starts getting quicker. Right. And it's that simple. It's that simple.
Well, and everyone has a story, right?
Yeah.
And everybody wants to tell their story in some way, right? And so I have tattoos, right? So I use tattoos as this analogy, because anywhere I go that I see someone that has artwork, I ask them about it. I say, hey, I really like your artwork. Tell me about it. Because a lot of times with tattoos, they're stories, right? There's significant events sometimes. Now, some are spring break regrets, but most are some sort of significant event in their life that they have decided to put on their body, right? Some are scars, right? Some are scars of life's events. And so to to not judge them or go, oh, why do you get tattoos? But to call it art, right? Don't call it a tattoo, call it art. And say, hey, I love your artwork. Tell me about it. All of a sudden they're like, oh gosh, this guy really wants to know my story. You know? And it's interesting how people will start to open up to you. And it's interesting to go, man, that guy's really been through a lot, you know? And so now your thought of him changes, right? It becomes a connection and he becomes human to you, not just this guy with a tattoo or this girl with a tattoo. It's they have a story. And it's like that with shoes or with haircuts. Hey, notice you got your haircut today. Well, they must have noticed me a couple weeks ago because they noticed that my hair changed.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. So sometimes it's just simple little things that allow us to connect with someone for just a moment. And in reality, life is about moments, right? And, you know, when we talk about friends, how many really good friends do you have in life, right? I can probably count on one hand.
Yeah. Yep.
Like good friends, like friends that we communicate on a regular basis and the energy's the same. They call me as much as I call them, right?
Yeah.
Other times it's acquaintances, you know, associates, friends, but not close friends, right? And so it's when given the moment, be in the moment. So when you have the opportunity to be in front of someone, be present, be there with them. Don't be distracted by your phone. Don't be distracted by what's going on behind them. But if you just give someone 2 minutes of your time and you can look them in the eyes and they know you're connected with them, can go a long ways. So be present and just be in the moment when you're presented the opportunity to be with someone. You know, and with CODA, when you talk about, is there something you can do more or how do you know the signs? Every kid is different, like, you know, that you raise. And, you know, we used to joke about CODA because CODA ran at 55. He wasn't overly excited, wasn't overly, like his emotion was 55. You know, he was on cruise control. So as a parent, it was always hard, like at Christmas, like, do you really like that? He's like, yeah, I like it. I'm like, well, okay. Whereas my other kid gets a pair of underwear and he's like jumping through the roof and like, oh, these are great. But I'm like, see, that's excitement.
Yeah, right.
But it's coming to understand their personalities, right? And understanding their ways of communicating. And that's a challenge. That's hard. But it takes being with them and talking with them and understanding that, because someone like CODA is hard to depict what mood he's in because he's so chill. You know, and, you know, he played goalie in lacrosse, but he had the perfect temperament for it because he wouldn't get frustrated if someone scored on him. He just picked the ball up, throw it out, and be like, all right, I'm ready for the next one, you know? So sometimes it is difficult, depending on their personalities, to say, oh, could I have done more? I don't know, because he just seems the same all the time, you know?
Yeah.
But it takes time to communicate with them. As parents or as individuals, sometimes we get that gut feeling, you know, that something in our gut to say we probably should reach out. Don't ignore those feelings, right? Those intuitions, because those intuitions are given to you for a reason, you know, and 9 out of 10 times they're correct.
Yeah.
And so being in tune, trying to listen, I guess is another word of, okay, who needs me today? Where can I be of importance or have an effect on someone today, and allowing ourselves to kind of be in that mindset of looking for that person that may need us, right?
Yeah.
Help sometimes too. And again, we're human. So some days we're better at it than other days. It's the idea of just trying each day to be a little better, you know, and make a better effort at it.
Yeah, there's no finish line when it comes to working on yourself. That's just how I see it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. CODA, was it hard for you, or maybe let me rephrase that. Was there times when you were going through what you were going through, times that you felt like, oh, my parents just don't understand, my friends just don't understand? I mean, because I'm sure it was hard for you to talk about, right? And unless I can't understand what my spouse is feeling or one of my grandkids are feeling if I don't ask them, right? And also there's that fear is, do I ask them? Because I don't want to upset them. I don't want them to think that I'm thinking something's wrong with them. And they're probably doing the same thing, right? Do I really tell them the truth? Or if I do, are they going to judge me? So we're both trying to put those magnets together, and they're never going to snap together. Did you struggle with some of that?
A little bit. For me, I always, growing up, you'll hear things and you'll pick things up. And when I was a kid, people would say, like, man, I don't understand people who want to commit suicide. Like, something's got to be wrong with you. Like, there's no way you can be normal and have that thought. So when I first started having these feelings, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'm one of those people who I'm not normal now. I'm a little crazy. And so specifically with suicide, it's really hard to say, oh yeah, like I think about suicide. Like saying, oh yeah, I'm not, I'm feeling a little down today. That's a little bit easier, but trying to admit not only to others, but to yourself that I actually think about ending my life on quite frequently, it's kind of hard to feel okay with yourself after that. And so whether there's, outside influences that affect it, really, it's just what you're feeling on the inside that I can't let anybody know how I'm feeling, because then they're going to judge me. They're going to call me crazy. They're going to, every day they're going to check in on me with like, they're walking on eggshells saying, hey, you okay today? You feeling like, doing something you'll regret. And so it's all, and kind of along with that, having that burden of knowing somebody else is worried about you. Because now not only am I worried about myself, I'm worried about the fact that somebody else is worrying about me, and I want to do everything I can to make them not worry, because, that's everybody who just wants to be a people pleaser, I feel like. And so it's really just a mental game of overcoming yourself. Like others around you, I don't know a single person who, if you went up to them and said you're struggling with suicidal ideation, that they would treat you with negative feelings. They'd be like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. You're not, that's crazy. Everybody nowadays, I feel like, would be very open and receptive to that. So it's really just overcoming your own thoughts on it and your own views on it to make sure that that it's okay. So now it's okay to talk to others about it.
Yeah, it is getting to be more open, right? And it's because of people like yourselves who are talking about it, right? They're educating people, because that's one thing. I mean, they educate us in school how to read and write and all this other stuff. But when it comes to real life, there is no education except for going out there and doing it. And for a lot of us, we have no clue what we're doing. It's trial and error for every single one of us. And Preston, you brought it up, like the traumas, right? That can stay buried so deep in us. And a lot of times we don't even know what's wrong with us. We know there's something going on. We just don't know what it is. And the more we start voicing it, and the people who struggle with those type of things, right? Addiction, depression, trauma, it starts helping other people understand a little bit more what's going on out there. I've been one who probably just like what you said, right? I mean, one of my buddies, when we'd talk with my buddy who took his life, my other buddy's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Come on, life's great. We'll walk out just with a smile on your face. Who gives a shit? And he's on and on and on. And I'm just sitting there listening to him. I'm like, all right, buddy, what can I do to help you? So it was two different ways, right?
Yeah.
And I was one that didn't quite understand it either. And then when my wife was in the depth of her addiction in 2019, I was coming home from a networking event, and I'd made my mind up. I couldn't come home to what I was coming home to anymore. And I was going to go home and get my pistol, and I was going to go up in the mountains where I love to be. And I was going to take my life. Now, would I have followed through? I don't know. And I'm so freaking grateful I didn't get to that point to find out. A phone call came through, and I was just on 7800 South, just coming up to Gardner Village, heading east. And I don't remember who called. I got off the call. And as soon as I got off, I saw the screenshot of my 2 daughters and 3 grandkids, and I just broke down and started bawling. I was crying so hard I had to pull over because I couldn't see the road. It's the first time in my life, literally, where I thought about taking my life. And if it wasn't for the picture on my phone, because I'm going, this is crazy. I'm looking at taking time away that my daughters and my grandkids have with me because of what's going on in my life, something's got to change. Right. And luckily, I had a good friend. She's retired now. She started the peer support program for the West Jordan police, actually for all police, because a lot of our first responders are taking their life because of all the stuff that they see that we can't even imagine seeing. Right. Mm-hmm. And stuff that they're not able to share, and they've got to hold it in, and they got to tough it out. And, the manly man thing, right? Oh, don't you dare talk about it because you're a wussy. If you do, you're not supposed to show your emotion. No. Well, definitely. Hell, that's like a cancer. It's just going to continue to grow and eat you up inside. And so it's not everyone who battles with mental health. And however, I think society is finally now starting to realize that there's a lot more behind it.
Mm-hmm. And it's really interesting if you look at the demographic that's most likely to commit suicide. It's middle-aged white males. And it's because whether marriages fail, whether, kids get tough, they haven't had experience to those tools in order to overcome those feelings. So if they've never struggled with it, and now they get to the point where everything's come crashing down, they don't know how to fix it, how to respond to it. That's when where all those suicides take place. And so what's really important is just getting people access to those tools early on, whatever stage in life you're at. It's always helpful because you might not be feeling it now, but one day you probably will. One day things are going to get too tough, and you want to you want to make sure that you can still focus on the good things in life. You can still focus on the people who need you, the people who support you, so that you can, overcome it like you did. Because that's why I think it's really important to get this into school districts and into students, because a lot of them not only are struggling, but one day they're going to struggle. And if they can get in the habit now of focusing on the good things in life, trying to be as uplifting as they can, then that's going to carry on throughout their life. What is it? 21 days to form a habit or something like that. If you can form that habit early on and just not get rid of it, then, down the road, you won't even recognize that you've used it because it's just become a part of your life.
Yeah. There's a gentleman who I was working with there for a little while. Oh my gosh, quite a few years ago. His name's Paul Feierheisen. And he started a program called the I Am Foundation. And he started it because of exactly what you're talking about. More and more of our kids are committing suicide. And he's like, something's got to be done. Enough's enough of this, right? Because they got so much life left to live. And I don't know where he's at with it now. Last I heard, he was able to get one program in one of the high schools. And it's a secret type program. People, if kids go to it, no one else knows that they're going, right? Because they don't want to be bullied, right? Because that does happen.
Yeah.
And it's all done under secrecy, I guess, and it's a place where they can go and say, hey, this is what's going on in my life right now. I'm thinking this would be a good connection for you and Paul, Definitely. just to kind of talk together and see where he's at with things. Cause he was starting to do a podcast at the studio. I was doing mine until we lost that area. We lost that spot. And I think he would be a huge connection for you to help you, because that's what he does. He goes out and he's hitting up a lot of these high schools going, man, look, we need one of these places here, right? And they have their own little area that they, it's like your own little classroom. And again, it's just kind of a secret thing where kids can go in and talk to someone that is struggling. And Definitely. To be able to offer a tool like yours, that's just an added bonus.
Mm-hmm.
That's like getting extra cheese on your pizza, which I love, right?
Yeah.
So I will be sure, Preston, I believe I have your phone number and stuff. I believe I have it on my records, either that or I'll email. But I will do an introduction because I have Paul's too. And yeah, I'd love to connect you two. And I'm just out of it. I'd just like to connect you. Maybe it's a fit, maybe it's not. However,
Mhm.
I've just got a really strong feeling that there's something that both of you guys can do together.
Yeah, that would be amazing because um, I have an interview with a school counselor coming up, just to get kind of from a counselor's point of view what could be beneficial for students, what could, or even the counselors themselves, what tools would they want access to know how their students are doing,
Yeah.
to kind of, whether it's something that is developed for all users or specifically just for school districts, give them some features that will, like from their point of view, be beneficial that they will actually use. Because I have been wanting to go talk to different schools, talk about getting the app involved in their curriculum, just because like schools already pay for all these different, tools for their kids, whether it's Adobe Creative Cloud for Photoshop or whatnot. It's like, well, let's give them something that'll actually benefit them past high school, something that they can use for as long as they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I don't know if you guys are interested. We are holding our third Healing Utah Success Summit. We did our very first one last August in St. George at the Dixie Convention Center. My good friend Mallory Roosh, who lives in St. George, myself, we had Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director for the Other Side Academy, downtown Salt Lake. We all got on stage and spoke, and then we held our second one here at the Miller Free Enterprise Building this past April. This one overdid our first one, which we were really happy to see, right? And we got such a great response. We're actually now in the midst of planning our third one. We're going to go back there because we were wanting to do it north. We were wanting to do it in Layton, but the Davis Convention Center, the only rooms they had were really thin and long. And we just felt it would be uncomfortable for our guests to sit there for 5 hours and listen to speakers. So we're holding it back, at the Miller campus. If you guys are interested, keep watching on the Facebook, or if hopefully I can remember, I'll send you the link. Our website's almost done. Might be a good chance to come out, buy a ticket, listen to, I'll be speaking, Mallory will be speaking, Curtis Marsh will be speaking, Brad Neufeld, the owner of Resilience Talk Network, will be speaking, and it's all about inspiration, addiction. But a lot of people who are going to show up could probably use your app. I mean, it's a chance for you to kind of come out and network. We do have vendor spaces that we are selling, and I'm not trying to sell you guys a space, right?
Yeah.
That's up to you. I'm just saying, hey, come to the event, because we always have breaks in between speakers where people can get out and stretch their legs. Might be a good opportunity for you to talk to a lot of people. Heck, I usually have a table with my t-shirts. I'd be more than welcome to have you guys even stand by my table, right? Just to, if you have anything, and even if you have a sign, anything I can do to help you get this out there. Because I know what it's like when you're first starting something. Funds are like zero, and all you're wanting to do is get your name out there and get it done. So I'm more than happy, to give you a spot on my table to where you can bring out whatever you want to, and let people know what you're doing. I don't know if you're 100% ready or not. Hopefully by October you'll have some things, but just let me know. I've got a lot of connections out there just from all my years of networking. I got people who can do shirts. I've got people that can do pants. And again, it's people who really give a crap, like John, right? People who care about others and all they want to do. And I'm not asking anything in return, no payment, just I want to give you an opportunity to get that out there, because I do feel it's extremely important, and it's such an amazing tool for all of us.
Yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
The plan is, luckily I've got a couple friends who have agreed to help me with the development process. So we're hoping to have an MVP done by end of August, hopefully. And then, whether that's something that we can take to market yet or not is to be determined. But I am hoping by January 1st of next year to be able to actually launch it.
Okay.
So yeah, that would be awesome to have that opportunity.
Yeah, you guys just let me know. Okay. You guys let me know that, I mean, it's out there on the table for you,
Yeah.
whenever you think it's ready. And then whenever you are ready, let me know, and I'll connect you with, Good Things Utah. And they are such an amazing people over there. Anything to help individuals. They're willing to do a little segment for you. I'll get you
Okay.
contacted with Savvy, and she's just an amazing lady. Yeah. So you just reach out, and I'm more than happy to help any way that I can. And you just say when you're ready. However, I will get you in contact with Paul, because
Okay.
I really do.
Perfect.
I think with the two of you, I think there's some things that might be able to happen. And again, I could be wrong. I just have a feeling that something could happen with that.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you so much. And, thank you for having us on and being able to talk about it and
Yeah.
get the word out there, give that inspiration to people, hopefully.
Yeah.
But I know I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And being a father, right? And knowing what he's gone through, and to see his desire to help other people, so for me, it's been a blessing to be able to connect him with you, and thank goodness for John. John's allowed him to meet Big Buddha and some other people. And, it's awesome to see him be able to take something that was such a struggle for him, and turn it into a positive.
Yeah.
And to be able to bless other people's life with it. And all of us have that within us. We all have that ability to take the negatives in our life and turn them into something positive. It doesn't have to be grandiose as an app, which we're grateful for the app, but we all have that ability to make that change, because again, it's not singularity to one person. We all go through stuff. There's not a person out there that doesn't struggle with something. And until we're willing to talk about it and have that person that we can go to and be open about it and just be what I call real and genuine, then that's where the human connection takes place between each other, is when we have that ability to just be open and honest. And life does suck sometimes. I've failed multiple times
Yeah. Right.
in my life, right? And I've gone through a lot, and I'm okay to share it because it's made me who I am today. And sometimes those struggles are what make us strong, and your story might be the story that is the survival kit for the next guy.
Yes.
And so the more we can get it out there and have these success stories and be able to help people share their own success stories, I think that's where we build the courage inside these others to be able to say, okay, maybe I can do it. These guys were willing to talk about it. They had to work through it, and they did it. Maybe I can do it. Maybe there's someone I can talk to that will help me do that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. And I agree with that 100%, Preston, right? It's like, again, my friend Nick says, a lot of times the greatest tragedies or different things that's happened in our life turn out to be the best blessings. Right. And it is so flipping true. So true. If you connect the dots backwards, not forward, connect your dots backwards, you'll see you're exactly where you're supposed to be right this very moment. And it's because of what you've gone through. Right.
Yeah.
You've learned certain tools, you've learned some strengths, you've learned some weaknesses, and you use that all for the good. Because oh man, I get emotional a lot talking about this, and I feel like I'm a fairly spiritual person. Okay. Not the religious part of things, but just spiritual. And it's like the people in the recovery community, man, they've dug themselves out of some deep, dark shit, just like Coda has, right? Something that we can't even imagine. We've not been that far down in that pit. And to be able to come out and do what Coda's doing, and a lot of these other people are doing, the way I see it, man, they're the disciples walking the earth, right? They're the angels, because they're the ones putting their hands out going, hey, are you struggling? I know exactly what you've gone through. Let me help you. Here's a tool that can help you get through it, right? Because we don't understand. My wife told me once in the depth of her addiction, she goes, for once, I wish you'd be my husband instead of my damn therapist. And she was 100% right. However, I didn't understand. I still continued to be her therapist, and I sucked at it. That's probably why I didn't make any money on it, because I was terrible at it, because I did not know what she was going through. I thought I did. So yeah, you guys, Coda, the way I see it, just like with what your dad said, you're the angel. You're the person now walking the earth in a human form, that you're out there now going, dang it, I see an issue and I'm going to make a freaking change. I'm going to help other people. I don't want them to struggle like I have, right? Or if they do, I'm going to give them a tool to help them get through it. So again, thank you. Thank you for what you're doing, because you will end up saving people's lives that you won't even ever probably meet, ever. But you're going to make a difference. And I love what you're doing. And I am so grateful for John for connecting us, because I'll do anything I can to help you guys get out there. Even when it's ready, you let me know. We'll get you back on the show, and you can start showing people. We'll do whatever we can to help you out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That means a lot.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners before we sign off? I mean, what did you want our listeners to gain today?
I just wanted them to have that message of hope. If that's the only thing they gain from it, then I'll be happy. Because my whole thing with the app is, I'm very religious, and this was definitely a God-given idea. Like I try to express that as often as I can, and just being able to, if I save one life, I'm going to be ecstatic. Like I just don't, as long as one person can get through something, I'll be just happy. So, to everybody listening out there, just know that there's hope. There, not only, do I have this tool, hopefully that's going to be coming soon, but there are already so many existing tools and support systems and wonderful, Facebook groups and all that are just a community of people who've struggled and overcome it. Just if you're struggling, reach out to those communities, reach out to those around you, and just know that, you're loved and people are out there for you.
I love it. I love it, man. That's great stuff. Preston, is there anything else you'd like to share before we sign off?
I think, I don't know, I have a lot of emotions that run through me. And I think the greatest thing I've learned in life to this point is love conquers all things. It really does. And the more we can express that love to others, and on an unconditional basis, right? People can sense if you truly love them for who they are, right? You got to love someone where they stand. It doesn't mean you don't want them to go somewhere, but you love them where they're at. And you be present with them. And the more we can be honest with our feelings, and the more that we can actually share our love with others, that's where real change takes place. People want to know you love them first, right?
Yeah.
And then once they know you love them, then you have that ability to have a positive influence in their life and to have an effect. So I think my message is a message of love. That's how I try to live my life every day. I try to help where I can help and express my love where I can express my love.
I love it. No wonder John connected me with you guys, because that falls right in John's category. That falls right in my category, and again, it was an absolute pleasure to have both you guys on the show. And I'm here, just reach out to me. You guys got all my information, whatever we can do to help out. And if you can make it to the event or, October, please come out.
Yeah, it'd be awesome.
There's a lot of people you can talk to that, you never know who you may meet. Right. So, yeah. Well, guys, man, thank you again. Thank you to all our listeners and our sponsors and our guests. Sometimes I get emotional talking about it. Other times I can hold my emotions back a little bit. But really, this is AR, the other side of addiction. But really, this podcast it's the growth that's been happening in the little over 2 years that we've been doing. It's just because of you guys, right? It's because of our guests, and it's because of people who believe in what we're doing. And really, God made this all possible. He put me through, my wife and I, through a lot of stuff. And that's actually what started this, right? We talked about it during the show. It's the tragedy and different things that kind of turn our life into a positive, to where we're out there helping other people. And I'm just very, very grateful that I have this opportunity and have a platform to bring individuals on like yourselves and so many other people. So again, thank you everyone for all your support, all your help. And remember this, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.